life is not about have, do, be, as in have something, then you do it, and then you become it. It's about being something, then you do it, and then you have it.
Hey there, welcome or welcome back to the Mischief Movement podcast. I'm Zoe, your guide on this journey to shake up the status quo and design a life that truly makes you feel alive. If you've ever felt disconnected, stuck on autopilot, or trapped in a life that feels more like a treadmill than an adventure, you're in the right place. I know that change can feel scary, so let's turn down the fear and crank up the fierce as we transform your life from the inside out. Whether it's solo episodes packed with actionable advice or interviews with some absolute badass human beings who've dared to defy the norm by living life their way, we're here to inspire, activate, empower, and challenge you each week. My mission is simple: to help you reawaken your rebel spirit, break free from mediocrity, and design a life that's anything but dull. You only get one wild life, so what are you planning to do with yours? If you're ready to stop settling, start living boldly, and create a positive impact along the way, let's dive in and stir up some mischief together. Now buckle up and let's go. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to be joined for a second time by Adam Slawson, founder of Plight Club and also known as the Vulnerability Guy. He's a true rebel who's journeyed from anxiety to self-discovery and freedom. We actually met up over the summer at Happy Place Festival in London, where he was giving a talk about facing and embracing your emotions. And we were able to reconnect over our shared stories of brand evolution and personal transformations. Adam's a former management consultant who lived the high-flying, party-filled life while battling the heavy burden of anxiety. But instead of running from it, he learned to embrace vulnerability as a guide, one that shows us when things are out of sync and how to find the way forward. In our conversation, we dive deep into how facing and leaning into our emotions can lead to a more abundant life, one filled with purpose and alignment. Stay tuned for a conversation packed with raw honesty, breakthroughs, and tools that you can use to start your own journey. Side note, I also discovered that Adam actually appeared in a Harry Potter film too. So yet again, I love the way this podcast takes all kinds of unexpected twists and turns. Anyway, that's enough chat from me. Let's get into it. Oh, this is exciting because I'm actually welcoming back a guest to the podcast. Welcome back, Adam Slawson. And
thank you for having me.
Let me ask you, what is your mischief?
What is my mischief? It's a good question. My mischief, actually, I would say, is this is why I am passionate. I'm called the Vulnerability Guy on Instagram. And I would say that using vulnerability as the catalyst to my freedom, or which I say a lot, is what makes me mischievous. Like, it puts me into situations where I would push the edge of my comfort zone. And so my mischief is vulnerability, but then how that plays out and how that makes me mischievous is kind of a bit, I suppose, a bit like Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream, whose mission was to kind of mix things up for people and for themselves mainly, but for people, and just try things, see what happens. And yeah, so my mischief is being experimental and trying stuff and doing that, and that's how I end up in weird places.
I love that, weird places. Yeah, but I mean, essentially, I think mischief, you just summed that up so well. I mean, mischief is that, it's that sort of being curious enough to try and give different things a go. And as I said before, it's really interesting to have you back because I'm really curious to find out what's been going on since we last spoke. Anybody who has listened since the beginning will have probably heard the episode that we did, and a lot of what we spoke about was Plight Club, but I believe that things have moved on slightly.
Yeah, they have. So Plight Club still is there, it's functioning, it's doing its thing, it's still, the mission is still the same. But at this point in time, I'm concentrating more on me as the founder of Plight Club in order to in essence, raise my profile so that I can then get the message out more effectively or more efficiently. So this comes back to the experimental nature of what I do. So with Plight Club, we are running an event called Emosh Pit, which is an emotional mosh pit and essentially a rage release rave, which is exciting, and it's helped people obviously to rage and rave at the same time, and it's creating emotionally expressive experiences. So I have a men's group with that as well, and all these things are obviously part of Plight Club, but they're also part of my way of meeting new people. And I'm an empowerment and relationship coach, and so it's all intrinsically linked. But in due course, once I'm kind of stable, let's say, as a coach, because it's, this is the thing that pays the bills, and as an entrepreneur, it's you want to feel like you take the risks and stuff, but you've kind of got to take some risks, feel grounded for a bit, take some risks, feel grounded. So I'm in that stage where I'm getting myself comfortable in this new way of being as a coach, self-employed in that sense, and then I will be focusing more of my efforts onto Plight Club. But in the meantime, it's not stopped because I'm doing these events which are all linked to my coaching and Plight Club.
Yeah, of course they are. And even now, you're calling yourself on Instagram the vulnerability guy, because vulnerability is so intrinsic to what you talk about, isn't it? And that sort of being able to express how you feel.
Yes, yeah, and someone how long ago did we speak? Was it a couple of years?
It was towards the beginning of 2023, so it's probably about 18 months ago.
Right. Okay. Well, time is flying, as it is for everyone. But then I think around that time, someone suggested to me, well, as the founder of Plight Club, you should have your own Instagram thing. So you should have Plight Club and you as a thing. And I was like, I don't want to manage two Instagrams because I'm not the best at it anyway, and it's not something that really lights me up, which I'm getting better at. But I wish I'd listened at the time, because we're right, and I should have done.
Yeah.
And then, so it came about through my coaching that, what could my name be on Instagram? And I was like, well, I'm all about vulnerability, and people have called me, oh, you're the vulnerability guy. And I was like, well, okay, then I'll be the vulnerability guy.
Yeah.
And I feel that in a way, with the work that I'm doing, and with Plight Club, I'm changing people's opinions on the word vulnerable, and I want to change that. Like in the dictionary, actually, I put a different meaning to it as well. But what vulnerability means is vulner means wounds, and ability means ability. So it's vulnerability is the ability to look into our wounds. So that's what I help people with. So as the vulnerability guy, I'm essentially the enhance your wound facing into ability guy, which is a bit of a mouthful.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, that doesn't fit on. So that's what vulnerability means for those that don't know that.
Yeah. It was really interesting because I was able to connect with you at the Happy Place Festival recently, where you had a talk about sort of facing your emotions, didn't you?
I did. Yes, it was really enjoyable. I have this. I don't know a huge amount about astrology. However, this is the one thing I did find out recently, that there's a thing called your North Node, which is apparently what your kind of purpose is, or what you're meant to be doing in this lifetime. And I found out more and more that mine is to get a message out there, be on stage kind of thing. And for the majority of my life, I've felt that me putting myself out there in that way, I was really nervous to do it. It was not something that I could do easily. I did do it in my old life and my old work, but it was something that would really make me feel not very well. But now I've realized that as soon as I step onto stage, I really enjoy it. It's all the fear before it. But I realize now that this feeling of being on stage and in really enjoying it is because it's what I'm meant to be doing. Whereas before, I used to think it was kind of egotistical that I really enjoyed it and I was showing off or something.
Really?
And so I shied away from it. So I don't want people to think that I'm being arrogant or anything like that. And that comes from a trauma that I had quite a few years ago, but which was that when I was 24, I think. I was in Harry Potter, actually. I was Cedric Diggory's body double. yeah. I was Cedric Diggory's body double. So that's Rob Pattinson's body double.
I can't believe this didn't come out in the first the first podcast interview.
So random fact. So 20 years ago, which is 20 years ago now. Wow. I was I was in a Hollywood movie, but like no one saw my face. It was just me in the background. But during that process, I was in the makeup chair, and someone said to me, "Life must be easy looking the way you do." And I was like, it's not. Like I was like, I get really anxious, I get really scared, and it's like, and then it made I ended up taking this thing of I felt quite guilty for the way I looked, which is, I don't think I'm God's gift or anything. I'm happy with the cards I've been dealt, but it kind of put this belief into me that if I use my looks as such, I'm taking advantage of people, and so it put this story that if I'm on stage, people are going to think, and so I just found it uncomfortable. And so through the work that I've been doing on myself, as much as I help people obviously find their limiting beliefs and work through them, I've practiced what I preach, and now I can feel it's my time to. I loved it. Like when I got on stage at Happy Place, I was really nervous. Well, my head wasn't so nervous, but my body was still doing its nervous things on the first day, on the Saturday.
Amazing. What were some of the things that you did then to kind of calm that nervousness before you went on?
So the way that I work with people and help people understand is that emotions are energy in motion. Essentially, they're a form of energy in motion, to be correct. And in the talk, I say that there's a guy called John Bradshaw who said that statement: emotions are a form of energy in motion. And the word is a Latin derivative, comes from to move out, or move through. Okay, so whenever I'm feeling like anxious or scared or whatever, or an intense emotion, I know that it's just energy that's blocked. Now, it's not beforehand. When I used to suffer from crippling anxiety, I didn't know that, so I was like, "There's something wrong with me. There's something I need," and I didn't know a way out, and things like that. So, just before I go on stage, I often I'll do some press ups or something like, just to kind of move the energy, and it's so releasing, and I used to kind of use kickboxing, which was to manage my anxiety, but it's not necessarily, if you only do exercise to manage your anxiety, you need to get to the root causes. But as a quick kind of form of relaxation, I only do like 20 or something. So I do that. I meditate before. I make sure I'm prepared. Is generally the if and at times I do go on feeling unprepared as well, just as a way of being mischievous ultimately with myself, just to kind of, am I going to fail? It's like to kind of up the ante as such. And if I'm honest as well, like I definitely went to the toilet quite a few times before I went, because my body was quite nervous. And so a really big takeaway from this time was I just did what my body felt like it needed to do. I didn't go, I shouldn't do that. I was just like, well, my body feels to move, so I moved it. My body felt like it needed to go to the bathroom, so I let it go. It was more of what I wouldn't have done years ago. I'd have overthought it and be like, oh, people are going to see me doing press ups. They're going to think I'm weird. They're going to see all these kind of things. So I was just like, whatever, I'll just do it. And it really helped bring me in. And then as I say,
that's like a skill in itself, really, is that whole being able to listen to what you and your body need in that moment, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. Like I suppose that is central to what I work with people on. To the thing of the first port of call for all of this work is, like, in this talk I say, face and embrace your emotions equals abundance. So face is the word I use, is liberate, which is noticing what you're noticing. So as soon as you notice a way of being, you've liberated it from your subconscious and brought it into the conscious, and therefore you have a choice about it. And then the next phase is embrace. So you embrace, which is accept your emotion. And the way to accept it is to do something different, is to change your behavior. So whereas before, using the example we've just said, I would have not done the press ups or not done certain things because I was afraid of what people think. So the belief that I had was, people are going to notice me and then I can't do that. And so the only way to change it is to do something different, which I did.
Yeah. And, what I love about that is that it feeds so much into what I talk about on the podcast, this idea of not having to accept a particular way of doing things or a set pattern. We all have the power within us to kind of notice, to break those cycles, and to actually go against the grain a little bit in many different contexts, not just kind of listening to your body, but as just a general way of being mischievous. Very much not just accepting that there's one way, or not just accepting that because somebody else tells you that, I don't know, you should behave in a particular fashion because you're nervous, or because you feel like this, or because you want to achieve that. It's more about sort of finding your own way, listening to yourself, and being unafraid to say, well, actually, I don't want to do it your way. I want to find my way.
100%. It's central point to the work that I do is understanding that we're conditioned from literally day dot to believe and be a certain way, and that is how like for the first 7 years of our life, we're in what's called theta brainwaves, which is like we're hypnotized. And so what we're doing is scanning our environment and just absorbing how we should behave. Like that's what's going on, and so we get set ways of being, and then the records start playing, and they play for all of our life unless we change them, and we have the capacity to do that. And so that's why I'm so passionate about vulnerability, is because it is the catalyst to our freedom. And it's the same as for you with mischievousness. That's a mouthful. But mischievousness and vulnerability probably feel the same. There's a feeling of fizziness in our bodies. It's like, oh, I don't know, I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to be exposed and I might upset people, or I do, this kind of thing. And it's all of that energy or that feeling is, as I said, the catalyst to our freedom, but we have to reframe it. We have to reframe it as something that is a positive signal. And these are quote unquote for both positive and negative, because there's no such thing. But the feeling of it feels like, oh my God, this is too much to take. I can't do it. And so we just stay with our records playing in the same groove. But the only way to move the groove is to face into it. So as an example, just very basically, I could have not gone on stage and not put myself forward to go on the Happy Place Festival. I was a bit nervous about it. There was an element of fear, a lot less than it used to be, but still there. And it's either like I do it or I don't. And if you want to have different situations in your life, you have to learn to be able to change your behavior. So exactly. You go, you do it, and I'm here basically because of that, right? Had you not seen my thing on the bill and contacted me and we got in, we had a chat and met up, had a nice coffee, then we wouldn't be having this podcast now, would we? So, the knock-on effect of the changes we make in our life, there is no such thing as cause and effect, which is quite a big thing to get your head around. And I don't think we've got enough time to fully discuss that on this podcast, but it is that ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned it in your talk and your description of your talk there, that facing and embracing your emotions can really help to leading a more abundant life. So help me connect the dots. How do we go from facing and embracing our emotions to then welcoming in more abundance into our lives?
Okay, so this, I will try and there's quite a lot in this, so I'll try and describe it as succinctly as possible. But if you think, in short, there's a phrase that life is not about have, do, be, as in have something, then you do it, and then you become it. It's about being something, then you do it, and then you have it in your life, right? And so in order for me to, let's say, have a relationship that I'm super happy with and feel abundant in, I have to be in that way I have to choose to be in that way before I have it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. The change comes from internal first, and then you do things differently, and then you have different things. So a way of phrasing that, which is BETDAR, which is belief, emotion, thought, decision, action, result. BETDAR. And so if I have a belief that I am a certain way, that I like a belief like money doesn't grow on trees, as an example, which is quite a common one. I have emotions linked to that. So therefore I can't spend certain amounts. I have fears, thoughts. I'm going to, if I run out of money, the world's going to end kind of thing. So decisions, I stay safe all the time, and the actions, and they get the same result, stay small. And there's the same true in a relationship. A belief that they're going to leave me. If I'm act as myself, which is something I had, if I believe that they're going to leave me, my emotions come up. It's like, oh, I have to act like there's fear. So my thoughts are they're going to leave. The decision is, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe vulnerability is the catalyst to our freedom, because it's the ability to be able to hold yourself in an emotion. And so when we have a limiting belief, if emotion, which sort of fear comes up, we have to allow that fear to leave our body, because every fear is a learned behavior. So when we experience a fear, we can either go, okay, the thought's linked to that, I'm going to die, or whatever it might be, so I can keep my decisions the same. The only way is to go from belief to decision, and not bypass the emotion or the thought, but feel it. And so therefore, every time you can master your emotions, which is to hold yourself in the feeling of vulnerability, it enables you to make different decisions. And therefore, if you make different decisions, you start sculpting the life that was meant for you. Mm-hmm. And in the talk, what I do is I use the reference of a clock. So if imagine when, hypothetically, went 2 years ago when we spoke-ish, my life was facing 12 o'clock, and think of the second hand going round, that every single decision that I make that's different, I start to look at a slightly different life with incremental things. And if the second hand gets to 3 o'clock, it's like I can see my old life, but it's different. But then if you keep going and the second hand gets to 6 o'clock through making all these different decisions, I'm not even facing my old life. I can't even see it. I don't even identify with it. So as an example, with that, I don't identify as suffering from anxiety anymore. It's like when I get anxious, I'm actually, I'm curious about it, and I get excited about it, even though it still feels not very pleasant, but you can't be curious and anxious at the same time.
So what are you doing in that instance then? Are you recognizing that the anxiety is coming up, and what happens? Are you choosing to sort of just allow yourself to feel anxious and take control of it? Or you're not squashing it down, are you? You're leaning into it.
Yes. So anxiety is not a thing. So anxiety is a symptom of another emotion that's not flowing through us, as I would describe it. And the way to describe that as well, if you think of a business isn't a thing either. A business is a bunch of people doing stuff, which we call a business for speed, right? And so when most people say, I'm anxious, they're not actually anxious. There's something else going underneath. They're scared of something, or they're ashamed about something, or whatever it might be. And so, speaking from my point of view, but for a lot of men, the belief that's programmed into us when we're children, which is big boys don't cry, And so my body, certainly from the neck down, had been conditioned to not allow the energy of emotions to move through it, which is particularly sadness through crying, because, I'll get beaten up if I do, or it's weak, or all rubbish, of course. And then in a way it's very similar, but for those in female bodies, they are conditioned out of anger, because it's not really socially acceptable for those in female bodies to show anger, which again is rubbish, but that's kind of what the conditioning happens. And so women go to sadness more easily than anger, and the reverse is true for men. But what I do is try to notice if anxiety is coming up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get curious about it. And then I'll go and I'll sit still and I'll meditate. And I'll be like, and now I have an ability, and this is true for everyone, but it comes with practice. I have an ability to be able to, in meditation, just go, okay, what's this really about, body? And your body will flick up a memory. It's like a filofax, if that's not too 80s reference. It's like your body knows all of the stuff that's happened to you, and it'll flash up a memory. I can give an illustration of this in process, which happened over the weekend. In a slightly different way. But I think Friday night I was eating my dinner outside, and I was eating it, and I was like, I should remember to chew it, because it's good for you, right? And I was chewing, and then I thought, it's kind of like, imagine if you put lumpy petrol into a car, it's just not as efficient. And obviously you'd never put lumpy petrol into a car, but the thing here is it's not going to work as well. And in my talk, I talk about, I use a reference to a car. And I was like, okay, I'll just quickly record it. So I just quickly recorded it, and me eating a potato. And I posted it on Instagram, didn't think anything about it. And the next morning I woke up and it was like, it's had 8,000 views. And I was like, that's weird. Like, I normally get like 400. I've got very few followers on Instagram. So I was like, okay. And then throughout the course of the day, just going up and up and up and up. And I was like, okay, that's strange. And so when I saw the 8,000 views, I was like, oh, great. I was really excited because I got lots of views. And then I went to the shower and I was like, yay. And then I came out of the shower and I looked at the comments. And everyone was slating me, like really horrible words, like shut your mouth, like, because I made the clip really short, so it repeats, so it looks like I'm eating with my mouth open, which I'm not. But they slated me for that, and then they started calling me all these horrible like words, and just I really want to punch you in the face, all of this stuff, and I was like, what? And this bomb went off in my body, which is because I have a fear of abandonment trigger had a fear of abandonment trigger and a fear of upsetting people due to a rumor that was spread about me at school. And I almost got beaten up by 4 people, but I had to face into going into that. And it was essentially people's opinions of me were out of control. And in my head, I almost died. So my body takes that memory and it's like it relives that. So in this being, and because of this thing, old me would have been like, oh my God, that's the worst thing ever. I've got to, do something about it, and I perhaps would have gone out partying, or I would have over-exercised, or whatever it might be. But whereas now I sat with it and I just meditated for a bit, and I was like, the feeling didn't disappear immediately, but I asked my body what it was about, and it told me about that thing that I just mentioned. But the important thing to say here is that our bodies don't release all of the trapped energy from the trauma that happened all in one go necessarily. It can come out gradually as a simpler way to explain it. And there's science behind that, which, I don't know exactly what it is. And I'm not a trained psychologist, but this is based only on my experience. And so this is what the pieces of the puzzle I'm putting together. But having that ability to be able to notice what you're noticing, which is, oh, that's a trigger for me. And okay, I'm not going to be scared of the trigger. I'm not really scared of the feeling, even though it feels horrible in my body. These people were essentially, being abusive towards me for no good reason. But I just wanted to bring a real thing happened literally over the course of this weekend to illustrate the point of.
I feel really, that makes me really upset to think that people are actually saying those things about, they've got nothing else to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually spoke to a friend about it, and she was like, it just shows how much repressed anger is out there.
That's true.
And and which is partly the reason, and it's just all it's done is fueled me more for why Plight Club exists, and it's doing what I'm doing, and it's very important, and it's a shame. And I'd be open to helping all of these people, and I don't want to just assume, but because they made a comment that they have problems in their life. But there is a phrase which is, life brings you people and situations to reflect where you're not free. And if you're throwing abuse at somebody outwardly, generally you've got if you're pointing the finger, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at you. It's like, if you're throwing abuse, it's because there's something inside you that you're not happy about or have to help. It just so now, rather than it did make me feel a bit angry. It did make me feel upset, but also my main reaction in these scenarios is one of compassion, rather than for myself, but also for the other people who are hurling the abuse, because they're just ultimately abusing themselves.
Yeah. And I think that just goes to kind of show how far you've come on your journey in terms of emotional training, to be able to kind of understand that and approach it from a place of compassion. It would be so quick to just react and get angry about it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's actually, this kind of goes a bit circle back to how it helps you with an abundant life, is that I have an ability to choose, not all the time, because I'm my partner. There's moments where we get triggered still, but we don't unpack it and learn from it and things. But the thing about, for me, abundance in life is mainly the ability to choose.
Yeah.
And so if you can respond to situations as opposed to react, you then have the ability to be able to choose your situation, and then ultimately that will lead to abundance. It's not like you wave a magic wand and it just happens, but like using relationships specifically as an example, like there was a long period of time where I got hurt in a couple of relationships, and then I had fear of abandonment stuff, and I was avoidant and all these kind of things. And my ability to relate, as in speak about how I was feeling and let the other person know my experience and not be ashamed of it, et cetera, would break relationships up. I'd move away from relationships as opposed to go in. And so when I, have the ability to be able to respond as opposed to react, so when I notice that I'm going numb, my decision is to talk about me going numb, that a sign is actually the person's getting closer to me, not further away. Therefore, in relationships, the ability to be able to relate in relationships is what I call abundance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's also important to remember that abundance doesn't just mean money, does it? It's
yes,
not.
Of course. Yeah. So, there's a woman, I got to learn this from a woman called Mary Morrissey, I think her name is. But there's 4 main buckets in life, according to her, and I can't think of another one. So I go with these ones, which are relationships, vocation or career, your health and well-being, and then time and money, like how you spend your time and how you get rewarded for that. And so if you're abundant in those 4 boxes or those 4 buckets, I would say you've got a relatively abundant life, right? And so the way I work with people is often it starts with relationships, because most people, that's what they're after, being seen and heard, and being in a relationship where they're authentically themselves and the person is loving them, etc., for who they are. But a lot of people aren't in those situations. But when you practice what I talk about, which is liberate plus acceptance equals magnetism, or face and embrace equals abundance, the same thing, in your relationships, you can then lift it and shift it into all the other buckets of your life. It's the same principle. So if you want to make changes in your life with your relationship, you have to notice what you're noticing, which is liberation. I noticed that I go numb, or used to go numb. So I call myself an ex-avoidant now, not an avoidant. And then, so I then choose a different behavior, which is talk about it. And therefore I attract a different life. And in this context, a different relationship. Okay. Yeah. But you can do the same thing with your health and well-being. If you notice, as a crude example, if you notice eating unhealthy food is not serving you, and it's making you overweight or not happy or whatever it might be, the only way is to stop eating unhealthy food, right? But most people are eating unhealthy food as a habit because of something else that's going on underneath. But it's so be able to notice what you're noticing is the reason I'm feeling shame, and that causes me to eat. As an example, as I actually have one client who we're in the process, her go-to for numbing, like mine once for kickboxing, is to eat junk food. And she's not overweight, but that's her thing she notices. And so now what we're working with her is she's noticed it, and now it becomes practice. And our ego is so powerful that she will eat junk food every now and again. But it's like, imagine if you're doing it 10 times, out of 10 times, you're doing it 10 times. But if you then start to do it 9 times and then 8 times and then 7 times, as your confidence grows, eventually you get to, you can see it and you realize that actually I don't need to go there at all.
Yeah. It's a bit of a tenuous link, but have you found your own happy place?
Short answer is yes. Okay. But there's a but, I suppose. My happy place is like everyone's, is emotions flowing through me, and so if I'm feeling sad and I cry, happy place. If I'm feeling angry and I can be angry, not at somebody, happy place. If I can feel joyous, obviously, etc., etc. My happy place is not linked to anything. My happy place is now an internal thing, and noticing that if I'm vibrating at a certain frequency, then life happens the way it is. And and being able to notice what I'm noticing and feel at peace in my life, almost regardless of what's happening on the outside, is my happy place. It's not a specific location or a specific thing, because that's not ultimately going to make you happy, right? And so that would be where my happy place, and also being in the bath. I just love being in the bath and watching crap TV. I like doing that. It's nice.
It's funny because when I listened back to our previous interview, you were talking about the cold showering, and there's me I don't want to do it, and you were like, go on, try it.
Do you do it?
I did do it. In fact, it went on the end of the episode. There's all these expletives while I'm freezing my ass off in the shower, it's horrible. But you do feel like a bit of a hero once you've done it. So
yeah. So that as a tool, as to illustrate and to link it to what we've just been speaking about, the way to be able to face into our parental and social conditioning is to be able to increase our ability to be able to stay in an emotion or an anxious way of being. And that's the vulnerability that comes with that, which is the feeling exposed. And the reason all my clients would cold shower is because what it does, each time you have a cold shower, it widens your capacity to be able to hold the energy of emotions and not freak out. So in a shower, this situation is like, I've been cold showering for however many, 5 years now, but not so much in the summer because it's basically a warm shower. But in the winter, I still have that fear of, oh God, it's going to be cold. But I do it anyway. And that gives you the confidence to okay, I've done certainly one thing, that is I've faced a fear and done it. And it's obviously very good for your body from physical reasons. But also the main reason is when you're in the cold shower, first thing you do is breathe through your mouth because you go, because it's a shock. So what we want to do with working with our emotions is learn to breathe. And that's the main fuel for our emotions. But breathe through your nose if you're feeling emotional, because it puts you into your rest and digest nervous system. But if you can do that in an extreme environment, which is cold showering, when you're in an emotional extreme environment that isn't the shower, your body's learned how to cope with it already, and so you breathe through your nose. So there is a method to that madness. It's not just is it sadist or just get in there? It's cold.
Yeah. You also, last time we spoke, mentioned that you were working on a book. So I did wonder if I could ask you how that's going.
It is parked at this point in time. And there's a reason for it. I have written, not long after we spoke, I think, I wrote about half of it, I think. Mm-hmm. And then realized that I know that there's something I want to write, but I haven't had the experience yet to be able to write it.
Okay.
In essence. So, and I'm getting close. The whole thing with my coaching and Plight Club and it's been about Plight Club's been around for about three or 4 years now, and it's evolved into what it is. And same with my own personal evolution, but also the evolution as the vulnerability guy and my coaching and things. It's been a big refinement of me being able to articulate my message and how I am, and not be, because I'm quite good at doing analogies and the different things to help it land for people. But I got to a point in the book where I'd started and it's like, okay, there's more to this. And so it's the same. I want to do a TED talk as well, but I hadn't quite honed my message enough yet, or rather life hadn't honed my message enough yet to be able to do it. So I've written a book before, so I have the ability to be able to do it. It's a fantasy adventure book, which is different. But yeah, this one, it's like, I want to write the message, and it will happen I think I'm aiming for 2025. It will be the beginning of 2025.
Brilliant. And do you feel like you know what your message is now?
Yes. It revolves around the phrases that I use a lot, which is vulnerability is the catalyst to our freedom. And then there's another one that I use, which is if you're not expressing yourself, you are literally creating a reality that was never meant to exist, which is quite one people remember. You're nodding your head, which is
because that sort of that hit me when I heard you say that before in your talk.
Yeah, so people remember when I speak, people remember those two sentences more, the longer one, but there's a lot behind that. And so there's quantum physics, philosophy, various psychology, loads of different things. So the premise of the book and my TED talk will be, it's going to be a build on Brené Brown's The Power of Vulnerability. So my belief is the purpose of vulnerability. It's in this ballpark anyway. So what I feel happens in our lives is that, as I said, when we come out of our mum's tummy, we instinctively know what to do. Like, let's say we've got 100% capacity to feel, so we 100% trust our instincts. For reasons, there are other things like ancestral trauma and stuff that I'm not taking into account, but just for argument's sake. And what happens in our lives is our ego protects us by reducing our capacity to feel whenever something traumatic happens that we don't have the capacity to be able to deal with. And what this does is reduce the trust in our instincts. Okay, and so at some point in your life, something will happen that you'll decide to work on your emotions, and then the phrase life brings you people and situations to reflect where you're not free comes in. And literally what's happening is your body is calling out for experiences to help you heal the trauma that's been in your body. It's like a game that our souls are playing. There's a phrase called Earth School, which is floating around a lot at the moment, which is that souls come into, and I firmly believe that we're souls having a human experience. And so it's, and for those that aren't into that, that's fair enough. But is there's more to life than what we see and we can see and touch is my belief. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, other people agree with that. So the purpose of vulnerability, I believe, in short, it's our soul talking to us.
Yeah.
It's our soul guiding us towards our freedom. And we label it as a negative feeling, but it's actually it's the catalyst to your freedom. And if you follow it and become more experienced at it and allow yourself to be in it, your life will slowly but surely align to the life that's meant for you. Not necessarily the life that you want, but the life that's meant for you quickly becomes the life you want. So all that's happening in life is we're going from birth to the time we choose to work on our emotions, which is just called the descent.
Yeah.
Which is in Buddhism anyway. And then when you start to work on your emotions, you're going on the ascent, ultimately, and you're widening your capacity to feel, which is intrinsically linked to trusting your instincts. And each time you make a different decision, which is, as think of the clock again, each time you make a different decision, it's like the volume of our inner critic and the negativity and all that just dials down a fraction. And so the premise of what I want to get across to the world is that inner peace, silence in our brain, comes through being vulnerable. And so as we calm down our body's nervous system and our natural reaction, there are reactions that we've learned to things, we have more energetic space in our bodies to be able to hold energy, emotion. And therefore it kind of drains out of our head, like to be a bit reductionist about it. People overthink and do it. And I was one of these people because our bodies don't have the capacity to help us. So I'm using my fist as the problem and one finger as my mind. You put all the weight of a problem on your mind, it's a lot of weight, right? But if you don't have the capacity in your body to hold it or help, it can't go anywhere. But once you train your body to be able to hold it, you open your hand, and that would be the rest of your body, then the weight is spread. Naturally, you start to overthink less and all this. So the book, or the purpose of vulnerability, is about that in a nice digestible format, which is easy to read and with tools and things to be able to help you and whatnot.
Brilliant. Oh, well, I do look forward to hearing more about it and whenever it's ready. But yeah, it's been so lovely to have a catch up with you and find out more about how everything's kind of developed over the last year or so. You've already mentioned a TED Talk and the book, but what are you hoping to achieve, I don't know, within the next sort of 6 to 12 months? Have you got anything exciting coming up?
Well, the next few months, we do a Mosh Pit, the Rage Release Rave. I'm going to be touring at a few festivals. And the next 6 months, I'm focusing on building my digital audience, mainly through Instagram. As I said right at the beginning, I'm not exactly great at doing Instagram, so I've got an agency to help me. But it's like I'm working on there, and it's involving me getting on stage. But what it took was a lot of reframing of my relationship with Instagram in order to be able to do the thing that I want to do. So, as an example, notice what you're noticing. Had an aversion to Instagram or belief that it wasn't good for me or anyone, which is kind of true. But then I changed my belief to it's just a way to me to practice being on stage, which enabled me to get through the block around it and actually do the work. So just illustrate what we were talking about. So my next 6 months is about niching and targeting and doing one thing solidly to get the functioning business up and running, to get myself some solidarity. And then in the new year, me and my partner are also moving out of where I live, and so we're going to be a bit more nomadic, so that'll be exciting. And then in 2025, it will be early 2025, I think it's more speaking engagements and putting the feelers out there for a TED Talk, and then but I'm going to write the book first, I think, because that's going to formulate the TED Talk. So that's the plan for the next, let's say, 12/18 months.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds fantastic. Where can more people find out about you or even work with you?
So on Instagram, I'm the Vulnerability Guy. So you can find me there. I'm just also.
Don't you have a radio show as well?
I do have a radio show, yes. So
that's quite cool.
Well, that's an example of what happens if you say yes. Like, I didn't plan on having a radio show, necessarily, and someone asked me to come on as a guest to their radio show, which is called The Real Sisterhood, and then she asked me to co-host it with her once. And then she said, well, we're going to formulate one called the Real Brotherhood. Would you like to do that? And I was like, sure. And I co-hosted that for a bit, and then she wanted to host it. And then they said, would you like your own show? And I was like, okay. So I was like, and it's called, my show is called Vulnerability in the City, which happens every second Thursday of the month. It's on Nettle Radio, which is nettleradio.com. And apparently it's the third biggest internet radio program in London, which is quite cool. But it's got to, I've got to say awesome. Internet radio. It's definitely not radio, but internet radio. So which I only found out in the last show, which is quite cool. And so that's one way to listen if you want to hear more of. And I speak to guests, and generally the premise of it is vulnerability in the city is it's about relationships, empowerment, and ways to tools and tips to help and stuff. But it's also a chat with whomever I'm speaking to about how vulnerability got them to where they are. And then the other to come to my website, adamslawson.com. Plight Club, you can get me through that as well. So you just search Plight Club and Plight Club HQ on Instagram, not to confuse people too much. And that's everything, I think. That's all the ways.
Amazing. Well, listen, I hope that we can connect again in the future and have another catch up and see where you are.
I'd love
12 to 18 months down the line.
I feel like that's kind of a nice marker of me committing to what I just did and see where I am in 18 months' time.
So best of luck with everything.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for everyone listening. And as I said, get in touch if you would like to learn how to face and embrace your emotions and unweave that web of your parental and social conditioning, because it will transform your life when you make the decision.
So just before we wrap up, I'm going to give you my takeaways from the episode. So number 1, in order to manage nerves, fear or shame, listen to your body and ask it what it needs, which may not be what you've been told to do by someone else. Sit with the feeling, and this will help you to move through the emotion rather than trying to contain it and feeling worse. Number 2, notice what you're noticing. Be aware of your emotions and then accept them and lean into the feelings instead of running away from them, because allowing yourself to be vulnerable then helps you to be able to make different decisions. Number 3, life is not about have, do, be, but being someone, then doing something, and then having the thing, which can also be remembered using the acronym BETDAR, which is belief, emotion, thought, decision, action, result. Each thing has a knock-on effect on the next. Number 4, if it's true that life brings you people and situations to reflect where you're not free, then look at the ones coming up in your life and ask yourself where you need to heal still or change and find the opportunity to learn a lesson. Number 5, abundance is not just about money, but much more about the ability to choose for yourself how your life plays out in the 4 main areas of relationships, vocation or career, health and well-being, and time and money. Number 6, liberate plus acceptance equals magnetism. So liberating is the notice what you're noticing. The acceptance comes from choosing a different behavior, and then you attract a different outcome. And finally, number 7, happiness is not a physical location or specific thing, but it's an internal state of contentment and peace. That's a wrap on another episode of the Mischief Movement podcast. If today's content stirred something in you, let's keep in touch on Instagram or connect with me on LinkedIn. You could even click the link in the show notes to sign up to my Mischief Mail newsletter, where you'll get exclusive insights on upcoming episodes and your chance to submit questions to future guests. But shh, don't tell anyone, it's our secret. For more info on ways to work with me and some fun free resources, check out the website themischiefmovement.com. Until next time, stay bold, stay rebellious, and of course, keep making mischief. Ask yourself where you need to hear. I can't even say it.